JANZZ.technology, the podcast.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the JANZZ.technology podcast. I'm your host, Laura Flamaric, and today we're diving into one of the world's most widely spoken and most complex languages, Arabic. With over 300 million speakers across more than 20 countries, it is a language full of richness and diversity, but for machines, Arabic is also one of the toughest languages to process. So, how can AI deal with this complexity? And why does it matter when we talk about fair job and skills matching across borders? To explore this, I'm joined by my colleague Nouf Al-Katani, ontology curator and Arabic language expert at JANZZ.technology. Welcome, Nouf.
Hey, thank you, Laura. I'm really glad to be here.
Nouf, before we dive into the tech side, let's clear up something simple that's actually not simple at all. What does it really mean when someone says, I speak Arabic?
Okay, that's a really great question, Laura. So when someone says, I speak Arabic, it can mean very different things. There is modern standard Arabic, like the formal version used in schools, news, and official documents. And with this language, like almost everyone understands. But actually, you hardly find anyone speaks it in daily life. And then there is the spoken Arabic, which is almost always a local dialect. So speaking Arabic might mean using a dialect at home, being able to read and write in modern standard Arabic, or even both.
Interesting. So for someone listening who just hears Arabic as one language, how many different dialects are we actually talking about?
There are so many dialects, honestly. Linguists usually group them into 6 or 7 big families. So let's count them, like Egyptian, Levantine, Gulf, Maghrebi, Iraqi, Yemeni, and Sudanese Arabic. And within those, you have dozens and dozens and dozens of local varieties. Some are quite close, like Lebanese and Syrian Arabic, while others, like Moroccan Arabic and Gulf Arabic, can be so different that speakers just struggle to understand each other.
That's fascinating, and I had no idea it was so complex. Could you give us a metaphor, something to help listeners imagine just how different these dialects might sound?
Let's take English as an example. Lebanese and Syrian Arabic are like British and American English. Different accents and some vocabulary changes, but people still understand each other quite easily. While Moroccan and Gulf Arabic, for example, are more like Spanish and Polish, you are steadily dealing with 2 completely different systems, and communication becomes really hard without translation.
That was very clear to me, so thank you so much for this great example. And then, between modern standard Arabic and the dialects, would it be like High German and Swiss German?
Exactly. All Swiss German speakers use their dialect in daily life, but when it comes to formal writing or school, they learn and use High German. Arabic works in a similar way. People grow up speaking their local dialect, but in formal context, like news broadcasts, for example, they switch to modern standard Arabic.
So, Arabic is already complex for humans. Now, imagine what happens when a machine tries to process it. Most AI tools are built for English or other European languages, but Arabic is completely different. What are some of the first challenges machines face?
Well, one obvious one is directionality. Like Arabic is written from right to left, which it's already create technical headaches when most systems assume left to right scripts. But that's only the surface.
I can imagine. So what else is there that makes Arabic so difficult for machines?
Okay, there are actually quite a few things, honestly. A major one is linguistic. Arabic is root-based, which means a single root can generate many different words. Let's take the root KTB, in Arabic is kataba, which relates to writing. From it you get kutub, which it means books, and kataba, which it means he wrote. For humans, it's easy to see the connection, but for a machine that doesn't understand the root systems, these words may look completely unrelated.
Yeah, and you also mentioned to me the diacritics. You write them as a child in school, but later on, you stop using them. So when they disappear, the same sequence of letters could mean very different things, right?
Exactly. I would like to mention another example. Let's take the root DRS, darasa, in Arabic, which is about studying. Just by adding different vowels, you get very different words. Dars means a lesson. Darasa means he studied. And from the same root, you also get madrasa, school, and mudarris in the male form, or mudarrisa in the female form means teacher. For us, it's clear these words are connected. But for machines that don't understand the root system, these may look like unrelated words, even though they all belong to the same family of meaning. And this is where diacritics come in. Those little marks above or below the letters, they completely change the meaning of a word. But in everyday writing, people often leave them out. So the same letters could mean very different things depending on the context.
And I find that fascinating. What happens then when we are speaking about job applications or CVs? Like, how do people actually write them in Arabic? Is it always in modern standard Arabic, or do they mix in other languages?
Right. In formal writing, like CVs or job ads, people usually use modern standard Arabic, but you also see a lot of English mixed in. This constant switching between Arabic and English makes it even harder for machines to process the text correctly. It would actually be amazing if people wrote one CV in Arabic and another in English. That way, each version would be clear and consistent, both for humans and for machines trying to understand the content.
And if a machine can't process this complexity, what happens when we try to match people to jobs?
Well, if the system doesn't disambiguate, a word like mudir could mean manager, director, or even school principal. Without proper disambiguation, the parser might just output manager, ignoring the level, the sector, or the role. And that's how highly qualified people's skills can end up not being recognized correctly in the system.
Right. And we've talked about how Arabic itself is complex. But what about the systems that classify jobs and skills? In Europe, we have ESCO. Internationally, there's ISCO. Is there something similar for Arabic-speaking countries?
Okay, well, that's actually a really important point. Unlike Europe, the Arab world doesn't have one single framework that everyone actually uses. So there are organizations like the Arab Labor Organization, which was established back in 1970 under the Arab League. One of its goals has been to coordinate labor policies across Arab countries and even to create common frameworks for job classifications. But here is the challenge. These frameworks are more like guidelines. They are not mandatory. So in practice, each country develops its own system, like Saudi Arabia, with the Saudi Standard Classification of Occupations, or the United Arab Emirates, with its National Classification of Occupations. That's why instead of one unified framework, we end up with many parallel versions. And that makes cross-border job matching much more complicated.
So instead of one clear framework, you end up with 20 different versions of Arabic ISCO.
Exactly. And that creates really challenges when someone from, let's say, Egypt wants to work in Europe or the Gulf. Their CV may not map correctly to the standards used abroad. Some governments are trying to bring more structure. So, for example, Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization in the United Arab Emirates classifies jobs into 9 professional levels based on ISCO from the International Labour Organization. But even then, these local adaptations don't always reflect the realities of fast-changing labor markets.
Of course. That sounds really complicated. Can you give us a concrete example of how this plays out in practice?
Okay, I would say maybe like a typical example. Imagine an IT specialist in Cairo applying for a job in Dubai. On his CV, he writes Muhandis Ittisalat, which literally means communications engineer. A machine without semantic might classify that as a telecom technician instead of an IT network engineer. So even though he is qualified, the system may downgrade his role and filter him out before even a recruiter sees his application.
And that's where JANZZ comes in, right?
Absolutely. With our ontology, JANZZ, we don't just translate ISCO into Arabic. We enrich it, curate it, and connect it to global standards like ESCO or ONET. That way, an occupation described in Cairo can be precisely mapped and recognized in Zurich, Berlin, or even New York. It's about making sure skills are visible and comparable across languages and borders.
And that sounds marvelous. I think this is important for listeners to know that Arabic isn't the only tricky language for machines. Many others cause real headaches too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, languages like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, with their characters and complex morphology, or Hungarian and Finnish with their very rich inflection systems. Even Thai, sentences are separated by spaces, but words are not. So for machines, figuring out where one word ends and another begins create huge problems. And even in Arabic, while we do have spaces between words, short prepositions or particles often attach directly to the next word. For example, if you want to say to school, so in English, you have a space between to and school. In Arabic, it's not. It's directly connected to the word, and it sounds like lil madrasa. For machines, this makes it harder to split and understand the text correctly. So most AI tools just fail on this. At JANZZ, we don't stop at English or German. We tackle these languages head on with our semantic ontology and human curation, and that's what makes our approach unique.
And to add one more, our Vietnamese colleague once told me how challenging her language is for machines. In Vietnamese, a single syllable like ma can mean ghost, mother, horse, or rice seedling, just depending on the accent. If a system doesn't capture tones and diacritics properly, the output is completely nonsense. So, whether it's Arabic with roots, Finnish with inflections, or Vietnamese with tones, the lesson is the same. Without semantics and human expertise, people's real qualifications aren't recognized.
You're absolutely right. If you leave it to machines, they just lump everything together. But with our ontology and expert curation, we preserve the real meaning. Most systems stop at translation. At JANZZ, we go further. We add context, semantics, and human expertise so the system truly understands.
And that's not just technology. That's about fairness. In the future of work, it won't be enough to process millions of CVs quickly. The real challenge and the real opportunity is to understand people's skills correctly in every language and context.
Exactly.
No, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope this was helpful.
It was helpful to me, and I am sure to our listeners as well. If you like this episode, subscribe to hear more about how AI and semantics are shaping the future of work worldwide. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.